While you slept last night, all units in the country were responding to a fire at the industrial park. I'm Clint Watson. We'll tell you what happened ahead in the Bahamas tonight.
2 people hauled before the court in connection with the murder of a police officer. The details straight ahead.
And grounded flights set to take off as Bahamas Air pilots are back to work. The Bahamas Tonight, the national report, starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Candino Knowles.
And I'm Charisma Robinson. On the eve of Christmas, scores of workers at the Bahamas Industrial Park have been left without jobs following a destructive fire overnight that reportedly destroyed 3 businesses.
Now, those businesses are Baypack, Ultra Pure Water, and a warehouse owned by the John Bull group of companies that supports Starbucks and Subway franchises. Authorities say the blaze ignited sometime around midnight, and according to Officer in Charge of Police Fire Services Superintendent Walter Evans, that fire spread pretty quickly. We've got team coverage of the fire, and we must tell you that our cameras were the only ones rolling on the scene.
When we arrived, we had a need to call out for all available off-duty officers.
The 4 operational fire trucks on the island, plus the fire services ladder truck and the airport services fire truck, had to be called to the industrial park on Old Trail Road to fight what experts called a dangerous, ferocious blaze. Fire Chief Superintendent Walter Evans says the nature of the blaze forced them to fight from the perimeter.
And you had temperatures which had exceeded perhaps as high as 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you can imagine, on a hot summer's day, you multiply the top temperature on a summer day by 20, okay? And that should give a person an indication exactly what we will have been dealing with here.
It's not known on which of the 3 companies the fire started. However, the bulk of the flames engulfed the Baypack Company, and the Ultra Pure Water Company was reportedly destroyed. Firefighters were also mindful of potential explosions as a result of propane tanks and had to safeguard against that hazard.
We had some deep concern that there may have been some explosion or some eruption. What we call it in the fire science is a BLEVE. If there was an explosion that may have erupted, it would have caused some major concern, perhaps from as far as persons who live in the Prince Charles area, as far as Seabreeze.
We're at the back of the industrial park, literally taking a risk right now as we bring this story to you, because what's happening is the popping you're hearing really is the aluminum melting. It's almost like butter behind me, and if I'm standing right here, you can actually feel the heat of these ferocious flames. Matter of fact, BEC has actually disconnected power to the back here simply because what's happening is you're seeing many fireballs that are actually leaving the industrial park, coming over to where you see BEC power lines, and that's a dangerous risk they don't want to take.
The Bahamas Electricity Corporation, we were advised by their technocrats that if this line had gone down, we would have lost power to the entire eastern end of the province.
But it's not all a complete loss for business owners. Firefighters were also able to protect several trailers on the property containing inventory. There are recommendations going forward that the fire chief will make for this industrial park, which houses a number of factories and industrial companies, particularly since there is no nearby water supply to fight fires.
Manually truck water here. There's no water supply in this general area here. And so the trucks carry 1,000 gallons of water. We have one truck which carries 2,000 gallons. And so as the water, the supply was diminished, we had to manually move from this point to in the area of the mall in the Highbury Park area to have the water supply replenished and then to bring the water back here to this fire.
And although firefighters have been on here for about 3 hours, they suspect it'll take about 16 to 18 hours before they're done with their work here. As to whether arson is being suspected, well, it's still yet early, but Fire Chief Evans says they're not ruling out anything at this point. Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
All right, thanks a lot, Clint. Well, our coverage of last night's massive blaze continues with Jared Higgs, who spoke with several company owners.
Raymond Rogers is the plant manager at Baypack. His father owns the company, and he says the hardest part of this tragic fire is the impact it will have on their approximately 75 employees.
Tragic thing, we had a lot of families that work for us, and, you know, I don't know what the outcome of all this will be. but you know, we had a lot of people under our employment, and that's the most tragic thing, you know. And plus, it was a family business, you know, 40 years of hard work that goes up in flames.
Luann Shea is the senior accountant at the food and beverage processor. She says her fellow employees are stunned by the sudden disaster.
Just a state of shock and disbelief right now. You know, many of us are out of a job for 2015. We have not even sit down to gather our thoughts because, as you see, the building is still on fire. And like I say, we are still in shock. I have numerous of the employees out here. Everyone is just in disbelief right now. So we don't even know what we're going to do right about now.
Adjacent to this fire is Simmons Manufacturing, a veteran business here in the industrial park. We spoke to proprietor Kevin Simmons, who expressed shock at this devastating loss.
Baypark happens to be the second oldest business in the park. Next to Holiday Ice Pool is now out of business. And so it's a big loss to the industrial park.
Simmons, who also heads the Industrial Parks Owners Association, also noted that the onus is on the individuals running the facilities to ensure high safety standards.
Every tenant is subject to their own rules and regulations that govern by their particular industry. In this park, you have a variety of industries, and so there's no one blanket. There's some basic safety standards.
Raymond Rogers says his father, who is currently off the island, is a strong-willed person who doesn't give up. However, they will have to make some important decisions when he returns. Jared Higgs, ZNS News.
A Christmas Eve shootout in Baintown has left one man dead and another hospitalized, bringing the country's murder count to 119 and even with last year. The incident took place on Hospital and Cambridge Lanes around 2 p.m. with the victim gunned down in front of a church and not far away from his mother's home. The uncle of the victim identified him as Arthur Bummer Culmer. Chief Superintendent Paul Roll says the victim sustained multiple gunshot wounds about the body, while the second man, who was on bail, was shot to the left chest and hand.
They were led in the area of Cambridge Lane, where they met a male suffering from multiple gunshot injuries about the body. EMS responded to the scene. They pronounced that male lifeless, when officers' attention were then drawn to a second male in the area of West Street, in the vicinity of Dorset Alley. He was suffering from multiple gunshots to the chest and hand. Persons then took him to the hospital in a private vehicle.
According to Rowe, the hospitalized man is 21. He appealed to members of the public with information to come forward. In the meantime, the victim's uncle, Stephen Culmer, was torn over his death and says he feels like he lost a big part of his life.
Preliminary information is that the deceased was walking along this Cambridge Lane here with another male when he was accosted by the other male, who was accompanied by two other persons. There was an exchange of words and what appears to be an exchange of gunfire.
Killing don't prove nothing. You know, back in my day, we fight, next day we was friends. Now it's strictly guns. Guns don't make you a man.
Well, two people brought before the court today in connection with the murder of an off-duty police officer.
As Fern Carey reports, a male defendant is facing 2 serious criminal charges, while a 19-year-old female is facing a lesser charge in connection with the officer's murder.
25-year-old Kwaku Street resident Dion Bethel was charged with the death of Police Sergeant 1475 Wayne Roll. 42-year-old Roll was gunned down while off-duty on December 4th. Police say Roll was sitting in his Jeep with a female friend on Durham Street and Montrose Avenue when a gunman approached and shot him in the head. In court, Magistrate Samuel McKinney formally charged Bethel with intentionally and unlawfully causing Roll's murder. Bethel is also accused of robbing the deceased of a $700 Samsung cell phone at gunpoint. Bail was denied and Bethel was remanded to prison. However, the court was not finished, charging 19-year-old Milton Street resident Kindira Farrington with receiving stolen goods. Court papers show that between December 4th and December 20th, Farrington dishonestly received Sergeant Wayne Roll's $700 cell phone, knowing that it was obtained or appropriated by an offense. Farrington initially pleaded guilty to the charge. However, after a brief discussion with her attorney, Jarrell Butler, she changed her plea to not guilty. Now, Bethel was remanded to prison. However, Farrington returns to court next week for the consideration of bail. Fern Carey, ZNS Network News.
30-year-old Reuben Baker is behind bars awaiting trial after being arraigned Wednesday for the November 16th murder of Carmen Jean. Baker was not required to enter a plea to the indictable offense and bail was denied. Following the arraignment, Baker's attorney Stanley Roll informed the court that the 30-year-old has made metal staples in his body. He requested that Baker not be made to sleep on the concrete floor in prison due to his medical condition and asked that Baker be also allowed to have a mat to sleep on. The court noted Baker's concerns and promised to notify the Commissioner of Corrections. Baker returns to court in February of next year.
This segment of the news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.